Hey everyone. Yeah, I mean it's definitely been 5 days. I think at this point, I've just been dealing with stuff, I don't think I've ever dealt with before, to say the least. A lot of anxiety, a lot of just, being sad, all that stuff. But good enough to record an episode for today. At least I apologize for a little bit of a lack of content throughout the last week with my granddad passing and a couple other things that have come up. So just wanted to keep you all in the loop about that. For today's episode, though, basically a full Mike Sullivan episode. Very, interesting timing for the announcement of a new 3-year extension for one of the best coaches in hockey. I'm going to give all my thoughts on that, what it means for right now, what it means for the future, where he ranks in Penguins history among all head coaches. All that's coming up right after this drop.
You're Locked On Penguins, your daily podcast on the Pittsburgh Penguins, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello, welcome back to another episode of the Locked On Penguins podcast. I am your host, Hunter Hodes. You're going to follow me on Twitter at Hunter Hodes. You can also follow the show's Twitter at @Penguins. And of course, thank you all so much for making this your first listen of the day. Again, really great to be back. Apologies for no episode on Friday. Apologize for no episode on Monday. Again, just been dealing with a lot of personal stuff right now. Just, I obviously deal with mental health issues. My anxiety has been just brutal the last 4 to 5 days for a multitude of reasons. And I just have been not able to record, but I'm okay right now. Thankfully, had a really good day today for the first time in almost a week. And I'm really happy to be back recording this episode. So, looked like there wasn't going to be too much to talk about, even though, I do have, obviously I have planned topics for every episode, but still, we're in the dog days of the offseason at this point. And so the Penguins made a big announcement on about 2:00 on Tuesday afternoon when they agreed to a new 3-year contract extension for Mike Sullivan. So Sully has 1 year remaining on his current deal for 2022-2023. Actually, no, excuse me. He has 2 years left on his current deal because this new one kicks in at the end of 2023-2024. So he has on his old contract, he has this year and he has next season. And then the new contract kicks in for 2024-2025, and then the next couple of years after that. So he currently right now is going to be the coach until 2027. For that, he could potentially be, I could be 30 years old, and he could still be the coach. He was, just for reference, when I was, making sure I have this right, when I was 19 years old, he was brought on after Mike Johnston got fired. And the fact that he has the opportunity to be the head coach when I'm at 30, damn, man, that's kind of crazy, to say the least. And I know you all saw some of the weird talking points from people today. Someone from 93.7 The Fan on Twitter, I think it was Josh Roundtree or something, like, what's the reasoning for extending a coach right now after he failed to win a playoff series with at least, 3 future Hall of Famers over the last 4 years. And, these people, they cannot see the forest from the trees, even if they tried. I'm dead serious. They really cannot. If you are going to sit here and you're going to tell me with a straight face that Mike Sullivan is to blame for the last few years of playoff failures, I think you are deranged. Look at this past year. Louis Domingue is in net. If they have Tristan Jarry for one of those three, if they have Tristan Jarry for that entire series, that's over in 5 or 6 games. I would probably say the same for Casey DeSmith. He's at least an NHL adequate goaltender. Last year against the Islanders, if Tristan Jarry doesn't crap his pants, they potentially win that series because they outplayed the Islanders for most of that series. 2020, COVID bubble, random stuff happens. I can put that past. 2018-19, the team just wasn't that good. Crap like that happens. Eat Arby's. But it's not been his fault. You all saw what Sullivan did to the Rangers in this best of 7 series. And yeah, I know they lost. Maybe some Rangers fans will come into the comments and say a bunch of 3-1, bro, and all that other, crap. But at the end of the day, he still made the adjustments to put the Penguins in the best possible position for success in that series. And sure enough, they went up 3-1. I know they got bad goaltending the rest of the way, but you look at the underlying numbers, you watch the games, the Rangers were barely better at all, than the Penguins in basically any of those games in that series. The Penguins were dog walking them game after game after game. And it's all because, Sullivan's just a great tactician of a coach. When he has ample time to prepare for one team, he can usually put together a pretty damn good game plan. Even against the Islanders not this past season, but the year before, Penguins went up 2-1. They were actually, looking like a team that can take down Barry Trotz's system. And in game 6, especially, they scored plenty of goals in that one. They were just given right back by some of the worst goaltending I think the Penguins have gotten in this Sid and Gino era. So at the end of the day, you really cannot blame him for that kind of stuff. That's out of his control. Do you want Sullivan to go in there and play goaltender? It's probably just going to be worse, and rightfully so. Josh kind of got ratioed on the street, and no, again, it's not Josh Yowie. Thankfully, he actually had a really nice tweet back, and I even said this too. Who is out there that is a better coach than Mike Sullivan? And I know he was not trying to say that, oh, they should fire him and all that, but it's like, when you have the chance to extend one of the best coaches in the league for, a couple more years, I say you do it. I mean, there's no lifetime extension for most coaches in sports. Maybe one is Bill Belichick in New England, something like that. Bruce Bochy with the San Francisco Giants before he retired. Even Mike Tomlin probably with the Steelers. He probably will not get fired until he wants to retire, to be honest with you. So, but I think in hockey, this is probably the closest one we've all come to seeing a lifetime kind of deal. And he's that good. There are not 3 to 5 coaches in this league who are better than him. Name them. John Cooper, Barry Trotz, Jared Bednar. I don't even think you could put Jared Bednar on that list right now, but it's probably John Cooper and Barry Trotz that you can put up there with him, and that's it. It's ridiculous that he's never even been basically a Jack Adams finalist. He's never even won the Jack Adams, which is also crazy considering what he's done with the team. And the naysayers will say, well, he has Sidney Crosby and Evgeny Malkin and Crystal Tang. They're expected to make the playoffs and all this stuff. But what about when they're not in the lineup? What about when he has half the lineup full of AHL players and he is still leading the Penguins to wins? What are we doing here? He should be getting consistent Jack Adams, finalists. I said that weirdly. He should be continually be getting to be a Jack Adams finalist year after year after year. I know I know that award is a what have you done for me lately and all that other crap, but still, you should be able to, have him in your top 3, considering the job that he has done with this team, ever since he took over. I think, Adam Herman, who does Rangers stuff, I love this tweet. He goes, Mike Sullivan built a skyscraper using toothpicks and silly putty, and some Pittsburgh media are criticizing him for having not built the Taj Mahal. Honestly, Adam is not wrong. He's not. Again, he has all these players, Sullivan, that are hurt year after year after year. They have always one of the top teams in man games lost. And he still finds a way to absolutely kick butt and usually outcoach the other team in the playoffs. And I loved what Josh Yowie said when he was quote tweeting this. If I can find the tweet here. Crosby loves him. None of the playoff losses have the look of a poorly coached team. They're consistently good to great regular season team. Ownership has billions in the bank. So if they want to fire him at any point, they can. He's even said, I can keep going. I do think ownership does have a big play in this. It sounds like they really love him, the Fenway Sports Group, that is. And it also sounds like Ron Hextall is a massive fan of him too. Hextall said in a quote today, Mike is one of the top coaches in the league, and it was important for us to have him sign long-term. He is a great leader that finds success through communication, honesty, and accountability. We know that Sully is committed to continuing winning culture here in Pittsburgh. And John Henry even had a quote here. You usually don't see the owner of a team have a comment, and he said, this is a wonderful day for the entire organization with Mike committing to remain as head coach for the long term of the Penguins. He has clearly demonstrated what an effective leader he is, and it's evident how well players respond to his philosophy and work ethic night after night, month after month. I think that, that speaks volumes. Usually when Crosby's kind of, when the Penguins are kind of done with a coach, you can see it. Teams lacking in play, they're getting outshot every night. The underlying numbers are really bad, but not under Sullivan. His message, it still sticks, and and I think it's going to continue to stick until Sid and Gino and them want to retire. Again, I love what Josh said. It's obvious that the core really likes playing for him, and I also think it's obvious that even the players that haven't even been here for that long, they also respect him a lot. So I am totally fine with this move. I think the Sullivan naysayers out there are just weird people. I don't pay much attention to them. I think that those are just bad takes, at least for me. Coming up in the next segment, we're going to have more Mike Sullivan talk, and just some stuff from the media conference that he had today. But before we get to that, are you one of those people who thinks it's okay to drive, stoned, drunk, and all that stuff? What's the worst that can happen? You end up driving below the speed limit. It's no big deal, right? Well, wrong. The truth is your reaction times slow way down when you're high. You not only put yourself in danger, but everyone around you. Talk about a buzzkill. Stop kidding yourself. It's not okay to drive high or drunk. If you've been using marijuana or alcohol in any form, do not get behind the wheel. If you feel different, you drive different, drive high, get a DUI. All right, I'm back here on this episode of the Locked On Penguins podcast. I am your host, Hunter Hodes. So follow me on Twitter at Hunter Hodes. You can also follow the show's Twitter at LO _ Penguins. Let's get to a few more quotes that I saw from Sullivan today. He was asked, why he loves coaching the Penguins, and he just said, I love what I do. I love being part of it. Love getting on the ice with these players each and every day. I love being in the heat of battle. Aside from playing, it might be the next best thing. And I loved what Danny Shirey tweeted. He was on the media call, and he said that none of his assistant coaches are yes men. They continually challenge him, and that apparently there are some pretty heated discussions, between them during the season, I guess, when it comes to player development or, roster management and all that stuff. So, they're definitely not, pushovers, to say the least. They will definitely challenge Mike when they feel like challenging him. And, that's always great to have in a staff, especially someone like Tar Reardon, who has been an AHL coach for Mike Vellucci. He's been an AHL coach for numerous years down in the minors. That is always great to have on a staff. You don't want, even, back before those two came aboard, they had Jacques Martin, who, remember, coached the Canadiens to a series win over the Penguins in 2010 when Dan Bilesma was the head coach. Mark Recchi, I don't think he was a yes man. Either Rick Tocchet, he was definitely not a yes man. Sullivan has usually had pretty good staffs for as long as he's been the Penguins coach. And, you're continuing to see that this year. And, I'm glad to hear at least that, there's no one that's, there's no pushover or anything like that. And I love the question that he got on Crosby, Malkin, and Letang. He goes, I can't tell you how much those guys mean to me to be their coach. And, it's pretty crazy. He is going to be their coach. If he finishes out their contracts, how do I want to say this? If he is still here when the big three finish out their contracts, so Malkin, 4 more years, Letang, at least 6, but I don't know if he'll be here 6 years from now. Sid, 3. That'll have been basically about a decade, if not a little more, as Penguins head coach. If he goes through that current deal, which ends in 2027, he'll have been here for 11 to 12 years. I mean, again, that is basically unheard of when it comes to the NHL. You see coaches fired all the time. Some even don't even last the full season when they get their job. Heck, even Mike Johnston, he lasted, a season and a half after he got hired from Jim Rutherford, and Rutherford was loving, Rutherford, he was loving to talk about him. He thought, he's going to take the Penguins to great heights and all that. They were stinking it up in 2015-16. He pulls the plug. Mike Sullivan comes aboard, and the rest was history. But Bruce Cassidy was only in Boston for a few years. Barry Trotz was only with the Islanders for a few years. He's probably a coach that deserves a lifetime contract. John Cooper, well, that's a bad example. He's been there forever. He probably does have a lifetime contract with the Tampa Bay Lightning. Even honestly, Mike Babcock during some of the years in Toronto, he wasn't really there for that long. Todd Reardon in Washington was only there for a couple of years. I think Adam Oates in Washington was only there for a season. Same might have been with Dale Hunter for 2. Coaches, they're recycled all the time. It's like a windshield wiper, basically back and forth. Oh, you get hired, oh, you're fired. Oh, you get hired, you get hired, you get fired. That kind of stuff. And the fact that Sullivan is right now, I believe he's the second longest tenured coach in the league behind Cooper. That just, again, that goes to show that how great he is at his craft. And that, again, if you were to let him go, and I was talking about this, I think it was about a week or 2 ago when I said, this could be a big year if the Sullivan does not get extended because, how does ownership feel? Well, ownership definitely, they showed how they felt about him today with both John Henry and Tom Werner releasing statements about how much they love Mike Sullivan. So it looks like, a firing at the end of the season was never on the table. I was on a Twitter space last night with the Hockey of Tomorrow stuff with Josh Yohe, Jesse Marshall, Josh Getzoff was there. Danny Shirey was there. Shelly Anderson was there. We were talking about Sullivan and, where he ranks for Penguin coaches. And to me, it's at least, a 1A, 1B with Badger Bob. And honestly, I might put him above Badger Bob at this point. He has given the Penguins, I think, their best success in the franchise history. I know what Badger Bob did. I know how inspiring he was. Obviously he died way, way too young. And I know how great of a system he had, but what Sullivan has done, I think trumps that just a little bit. And what you're seeing on an every year basis at this point is nothing short of remarkable. So wanted to give my thoughts on that and just, get into more Sullivan talk for this episode. So a little more to get to for the rest of this episode for Locked On Penguins podcast, and that's all coming up right after this drop. All right, I'm back here in this episode of the Locked On Penguins podcast. I am your host, Hunter Hodes. Remember to follow me on Twitter at Hunter Hodes. You can also follow the show's Twitter at LO_Penguins. And of course, thank you all so much for making this your first listen of the day. Again, can't stress enough thanking everyone for listening to this, even though, again, I'm still not 100%, but, I'm just about back there at this point. Saw a couple moves around the NHL the last couple of days. Tage Thompson signed a massive deal in Buffalo on Tuesday, 7 times 7.1. Definitely a high ticket there. They're betting a lot on him. I think they're kind of hoping that last season was not a fluke, but when you look at what he did, this was 38 goals, 68 points in 78 games. Before that, his highest 38 games in 2020-21, 8 goals, 14 points. Before that in Buffalo, 7 goals, 12 points. Which version are you going to get here, Buffalo? Are you going to get this year's version? Which, if he continually scores 30 to 35 to close to 40, 7.1 looks like a bargain. But if not, and he scores 15, 20, that contract's starting to look bad. I know the Sabres have some cap space. They can use as much of it as they want right now. They're not really in it to win it. I think they're obviously still rebuilding a little bit, but that contract definitely carries some risk because even you look at his shooting percentage. If I can find that this year, 11%. Actually, no, excuse me, 15% this year, 11% overall. Before that, his highest shooting percentage was 8.3 in 2020 and 2021. Is there going to be a bit of regression there? Maybe, but it's a tough bet for Buffalo to make. I don't blame them for doing it. I think they want to, hope that, and they want to hope, and they think they know that they're going to get this out of him. year after year. But we'll have to see, to say the least. We also saw Sam Steele go to the Minnesota Wild, 1 year, $825K contract. That's good for them. I think good depth player who can play on the third and fourth line. Vegas finally traded for a goaltender, Aiden Hill from the San Jose Sharks. It looks like he's probably going to be the backup. He's probably going to be the starter or something like that with Mason Thompson, I think, is their other goaltender out there. Vegas has some trouble next year goal. That's going to be something else, to say the least. Otherwise, not really much else news around the league. Though I will say it was nice to see. I haven't recorded in a few days. Phil Kessel, 1 year to the Las Vegas Golden Knights. I know it's a bit of old news. I'm sure you all know about that, but I'm happy for him. He is basically built to play in Las Vegas. With how much he already gambles, go check out Josh Yohe's articles and stuff like that, talking about the man, the myth, the legend, Phil Kessel, and how he was always, I think, at Rivers and all that. He was born to be a Vegas Golden Knight. He can just go to some of the casinos after the games, have some fun. Obviously, don't get addicted, that kind of stuff. That'd be bad. But it sounds like he's always been good at winning in whatever game he plays. And he can help, put the puck in the net. Be a good playmaker. I think, he can be a good fit on the, I don't know if it's on the first line, but, maybe the second line with Jack Eichel, something like that, maybe the third line as well. I think those would be, solid fits for Phil the Thrill in Vegas. So definitely really thrilled for him that he is going to be back. Not going to be back, that he is going to be going to Vegas. Sounds like he had some interest from a few other teams as well. But that'll do it for this episode of the Locked On Penguins podcast. I really appreciate all of you listening. Second to last day in August. Believe it or not, Yins, Thursday is the official start of September. 3 weeks away from that point until fall. We're approaching the end here. Summer is just about done. Training camp starts in about 3 weeks. We're back to daily episodes on September 19th, which is right around when camp starts. So definitely a lot to look forward to on the show. If you haven't subscribed to the show yet on YouTube, go do that. Just look up Locked On Penguins on YouTube and all that. And for those that continue to listen on Apple and Spotify, thank you all so much for listening. And I'll talk with you all with another episode either on Wednesday or Thursday.